in this book, Essays on the Theory of African Music, there is a chapter, I think it was even the second one, Concepts of African Music Theory, where I actually dwelt on the concepts by Western scholars on what African music is. Yes, you talked about a lack of appreciation of the African understanding of its own music. And I took a critical analysis of the various opinions expressed, various concepts enunciated by mostly Western scholars on the theory of African music. On African music in general, not just its theory. In fact, as you said, most of them lack the expression, acceptance that there is a theory of African music. And one of those I quoted was the Reverend A.M. Jones, who was a fantastic scholar in the development of African music, but they have this conception that the African is unaware of what he is doing, and it takes a Western scholar to explain to an African what he is doing, and the African is delighted to see, so that's a theory behind what I'm doing. And I thought that was ridiculous. And I pointed out that having taught music in American universities, and even in England, but particularly in American universities, the Western layman is also enthused by being explained to him the theories behind his own music, because he does not know it until you expose it to him. So the Western scholar would tell an African, sing me your scale. First of all, you have to understand what a scale is and know what circumstances, what determines a scale, what are the factors that you use in judging a scale. Of course, you cannot expect an answer from him. And so when you explain to him, your scale has 5 notes, is that true? Yeah, but that's because you're looking at it from the Western point of view. But when an African who has studied music, both from the Western and the African perspective, sees that scale and then analyzes it on basis not only of Western music, but of Eastern European music, Chinese music, African music, and sees what the African is doing and interprets it to both the African and the non-African. It is a new vision, a new exposure, a new discovery. So yes, the Western musician does not take into account the possibility that the African knows what he is doing, because he has not explained what he's doing to him in the Western terms. Certainly the African knows what he's doing. If you play a wrong note, he tells you that's not in the scale. If you sing a wrong thing, he tells you, no, that's not the tune. That's why if you take a tune, an African tune, and play it back to him, if it's in the wrong scale, he'll tell you, no, that's not right. But if you bring it something approximate to his own scale, he will accept it. So yes, I have certainly observed an absence of the conception that the African is aware of what he's doing, but may not be able to explain it in the Western terms unless he has been educated in the Western terms. They said, oh yes, this is what you do in the West, but this is what we do in Africa, and he's able to tell the difference. That's why I said you cannot tell what's African about music until you know what is music. So yes, that's certainly the case, but even Africans, when they explain what's happening, have to do that on a perspective that is understandable by all, including Africans, by Westerners, by non-Westerners, and by Africans, on a universal language, on a generally accepted format, like transcription and notation. There have been all sorts of notation possibilities advocated by Africans and non-Africans alike on how African music should be notated and how it should be transcribed. And I've quoted quite a few in some of this book. None of them is perfect. Just as I said, you can take the alphabet, which is used virtually universally, you can say, even though mostly in the Western world. The alphabet is the means of writing, which even the Russians and the Greek use it, but it's not the same notation. And the alphabetic system is different in German from what it is in French and what it is in English. And even in English, there are various versions. The Nigerian English, same as the Ghanaian English, not to talk about British English, nor the American English, or Australian English. So the notation has to be adapted, just like the alphabetic system. It's adapted for the language of which it is used. For example, I make fun about a song by Bankole called Adorafu Alafia, a song about the war, praying a prayer for the soldiers. And there is a section which says, Toju gbogbo katakata, Toju gbogbo porogodo, Toju wo, Toju porogodo. And I make fun of it because there was a teacher in, I think, Holy Child School in Lagos, a European teacher who couldn't understand what the girls were singing, and told them, no, I don't hear your words. Where you say, to that point where you can, Toju gbogbo porogodo. It should be Toju gbogbo one patapata, Toju gbogbo one porogodo. You are saying Toju gbogbo patak porogodo. So you're not saying the right words, because the alphabetic notation of patak and porogodo are not in the English language, and there's no, the P in Yoruba, there's no P sound in Yoruba language, but they have P, and they use the P to represent that. So pata is actually patak, porogodo is porogodo, but if you look at it from the English perspective, it will sound like porogodo or pata. So such things need understanding from a multi-dimensional perspective to be able to see the difference and know that this is applicable here, it is not there. This theoretical principle is applicable here, it is not there. So it is by this overall knowledge of what music is, including notation and transcription, including tuning and temperament, to understand fully what's being discussed. For instance, M. Jones said he never heard the Africans sing the major third in the diatonic scale in tune, or the major seventh. Yes, because it is not in the normal scale of the Western diatonic. We don't have a major third as such, or minor third. We have what was best described as a neutral third, or neutral seventh. So Nigerians tend to sing the major third flat. Pa, 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 pa. So they don't sing quite minor third, but in between the major and minor third. So it becomes what's called a neutral third. As I said, we don't have a major triad matter. We have what's called a perfect triad, which is a tonic, a semi-major, semi-minor third, and a perfect fifth. So these things need more than a superficial understanding of tuning and temperament and intonation to understand the theoretical principles, not just say, they can never sing it in third, they don't even know what they're doing. No, they know what they're doing, but they might not express it in the terms that you will understand in your own language. I hope that answers your question as much as I can under the circumstances.